Hi everyone, it's Barry here from Geek Syndicate. I'm all on me lonesome, no Dave today. So in this special interview, I have a chat with Adrian Hodges, who is the creator of the new BBC One show called The Musketeers. So without further ado, here's the interview.
Hello.
Hello, is that Adrian?
Yeah, speaking.
Hi Adrian, it's Barry Nugent.
Hello, Barry. How are you, mate?
Not bad, mate. How you doing?
Very good indeed, thanks. I'm fine.
Good. It's been a while.
Yeah, I guess it has. But you're going from strength to strength on the website. I see it everywhere.
Well, we try. I feel you've got me beaten on the going strength to strength, mate.
Well, that's kind of you. Thank you.
Well, one of us has got a brand new BBC series starting.
Well, that's true. Well, yeah, I can't deny it, but what can I tell you?
Well, before I sort of really kick into it,
Yep.
what I want to say is, basically, I've just finished I've watched the trailer, I've watched all the little clips, I've read the interview, and I've got to say, I am proper excited for this show.
Oh, thank you, Barry. That's great. Yeah, well, I hope that your excitement is justified when you see it. I'm really proud of it. I think it's a really, really fun show, and just with a little bit of grit in it. So I'm really proud of it.
My sort of background is I'm a massive fan of Swashbucklers since I was a kid, and one of the sort of films that kind of got me into that side of things was the Three Musketeers, but it was the one with Gene Kelly.
Gene Kelly one's a good one. I like it.
Yeah, that was probably... Yeah, looking at all the sort of takes on it, that's probably been my favourite one, because I thought the sort of newer one with Oliver Reed and sort of Michael... Is it Michael York? Was in that one?
Yeah, Michael York.
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed it, but it was just a little bit too camp for me.
I think with Gene Kelly it would be camp, but oddly enough it wasn't.
No. I mean,
it's one of the versions that captures the spirit of the novel quite well. What is it, about 1951, something like that? I can't remember now.
No.
But it's interesting. I mean, I've watched I don't know, maybe a dozen versions of the Musketeers in one form or another since I started this process. Some of them are good. I probably like the Leicester one more than you.
Yeah.
It is a little bit camp, and some of the slapstick is a little bit over the top to modern taste, I would have thought. But some of it was the first one I'd seen that really got the Milady Athos thing really in an interesting way.
Actually, yes, that was done well. I thought it was done really well in the Gene Kelly one as well. Yeah,
that's fair. I mean, I haven't seen that one recently enough to confirm that, but I think that my memory of it is that that's absolutely fair. And, and he was a very dashing guy, and he had the moves, he looked great.
Yeah.
So, but the truth is that it's been done well, it's been done okay, and it's been done badly, and it's been done a lot. And, when you're looking at this genre, you're really saying, well, what can we bring to the party that's new, that's fun or modern? And, I just kind of thought that it's a genre I love. I'm very much like you. Funnily enough, the one that, I remember from when I was a kid, I was one of those kids who kind of didn't want to go out to play in case I missed something on the TV.
Yes.
So, and on Saturday afternoons on the BBC Two, they used to have like movies just randomly, anything, westerns, costume, modern melodramas, anything you like. I don't think they had a clue what they'd got. They just hurled them at the TV, And one of them was the phenomenally good Robin Hood version with Errol Flynn.
Oh God, yeah.
Which is a movie I still love to this day. And that was a kind of really interesting thing because it's kind of not camp, Perhaps it is to some modern sensibilities, but it was very joyous, very entertaining. The fighting is incredible in it, but there was a kind of underlying seriousness in it, which I think came from Basil Rathbone as the villain in it, which I really loved, and it always stayed with me. And of course it looks gorgeous as well. It's an incredible looking film.
Yeah.
And of course it has some hokey moments, but then Hollywood movies usually did at that time. But the abiding memory is of the sheer thrill of it. And then you come through to the modern era, and you've got Raiders of the Lost Ark at one extreme, which completely reinvented that kind of serial melodrama adventure, and dragged it into the modern era. And I think we've all been sort of, trying to find that magical formula ever since,
Yeah.
But this genre is tough to do on TV because, as you say, on the one hand you can go very camp. On the other hand, it's tough to do action on television budgets because we're competing with, movies like The Lone Ranger last year, which are literally hundreds of millions of dollars. Movies like the last version of The Three Musketeers, it was only about 18 months ago, and that was about $100 million or something, or $90 million. So you've got all these things to go, but I thought there was a way to do it. I thought if you take it seriously, if you go with a tone that gives the real kind of gravity to it, you keep the sense of fun, you keep the awesome fighting, you try and come up with variations on action which make people smile or make them amused, but at the same time they feel real, then you might be onto something, and that's really the attitude I've tried to have to it.
Well, I think that's a great attitude, and I think the thing that you sort of summed up is something that the Robin Hood film got right, the Errol Flynn one, and that Raiders of the Lost Ark did, where they took the genre seriously, and there's moments in Raiders of the Lost Ark which is there's some fun moments like the bit with the swordsman or whatever, but like you say, I mean, there's a lot of Raiders of the Lost Ark which is quite serious, and Indiana Jones for a lot of that film is quite a serious character.
Well, absolutely. It takes itself seriously. That doesn't mean it can't have fun.
Yeah.
And the humour arises, from character, but not from slapstick. I mean, there are moments that I think nobody will ever forget her knocking him out with the mirror on the boat, and that awesome genius of reinventing the big old fight where he just shoots him instead of going in the sword fight.
Yeah.
That kind of wit you like, but it doesn't undermine the seriousness of the story, and that's really what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
I have a moment, quite early on in the Musketeers where we take the steam out of a sword fight in a slightly unexpected way, and you just gently mock all the conventions of the sword fighting genre, but at the same time you're taking them seriously. My feeling about Swashbucklers, and it's a word we banned for the first year of development because it always promoted the wrong idea of what we were going to do. Well, yeah, because if you say Swashbucklers, the two things happen. One is people think camp, and they think feathers and plumes and tabards and fancy costumes and leather boots and all the rest of it. And, we still got the leather boots, but we haven't got the rest of it. And the other thing they think is kind of endless and slightly pointless sword fighting,
Yeah.
And you know better than I do that action can get boring if it doesn't have character, if it doesn't have content, if it doesn't have reality. So, what I did was like strip everything back. It's like taking something back into the laboratory and saying, what are the elements that we love about these movies, and how can you reproduce them in 2014, in a way that the audience finds exciting? And one of the key things, I think, is character. The Musketeers are pretty famous guys, but at the end of the day, what do we really know about them? If you say Aramis is a womanizer, which is the thing that everybody knows about Aramis, what does that actually mean? Well, in a lot of movies, it just means that barmaids fall over whenever he goes near them, and stuff like that. And that's kind of amusing, but it doesn't really take you anywhere in story terms.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like what we've done in this whole series is say, okay, if Aramis is a womanizer, what are the consequences for the women who fall in love with him? What is it he's after? What does he want, And also, with Porthos, what's his background? In most of the movies, he's just kind of a big, fat, drunk guy who everybody loses interest in quite quickly. And we wanted to say, no, this is a real man. This is a real guy with a real background. What's his journey been? So it's all those kinds of things we want to do. Same with Athos, same with D'Artagnan. It's a case of treating them like real characters, but still keeping the sense of fun, the sense of joie de vivre, the whole thing,
Well, I mean, you kind of covered my first question, which was going to be, what is it about the story that makes it so appealing? But I mean, the question I wanted to ask, I mean, this is, as we've both said, the Musketeers has been something that's been done so many different times. And admittedly, sort of, reading some of the interviews with yourself, one of the things you've said that these are new stories. So so straight away there's, you're setting yourself apart, you're doing something slightly different. Yeah. But I mean, you're still adapting characters, albeit in different settings.
Yes, that's true.
So where do you start? When you sort of sat down and said, right, I'm gonna take on the Three Musketeers. What was the first thing? What was your first job after you had a stiff drink?
I had a second drink. The first job. Well, it's a really good question, Barry, and it's something that, in a way, it's a process that we never stop doing, which is to say, this Swashbuckler is a drama. You can't merely presenting something as exciting doesn't mean it is exciting. And everybody we spoke to said the same thing, and this was my instinct anyway, was that they all said, I like the Musketeers, I'd like to see that, but I want it to be a proper drama. I don't want it to be silly, I don't want it to be just slapstick or camp or whatever. I want it to be a real story. And so that's really where I started, and I decided almost straight away after reading the book that I didn't want to adapt the book, because it's been done a lot, you know, and really people, if they do know the story, that's the story they know. And I felt the other thing is, because I want to make a series here that has, repeatable potential if it goes well, I didn't want to get trapped into the story of the book, because that would have made us a mini-series. So I just really said, let's sit down here and say, give ourselves a brief, and this is a scary bit, saying let's make 10 little adventure films, with these characters that we love. And that was really the brief. So the first thing I did was really say, okay, how do we strip it all back, strip all the cliches out, and then look at it again and say, how can we make it fresh? So it's really all about going back to the characters and saying, who are they and what do they want? It's the same emotional journey, really, that you take on any drama.
Yeah.
And I think it's, I think the comparison I'd make, although I don't pretend that, our show is in the same class as this, because this is a classic, and I'm not that immodest, at least not yet. But, I think it's a bit like the process that Ron Moore probably went through on Battlestar,
Right.
It's that thing of saying, how do you take space and make it completely fresh again?
Yeah.
How do you take these conventions, the hardware, all the rest of it, and tell stories that mean something to a contemporary audience? And I think that's really what I'm trying to do with the Swashbuckler. I'm trying to say, yes, it has everything you like about the genre. Yes, it has the sword fights. Yes, it has the muskets. It has the horses. It has all the scheming, the romance, the tragedy, all the rest of it. But, does it feel like something that's telling stories that mean something now? And that's what I hope that we've done. That's certainly the ambition for it, anyway.
Well, as you said, I mean, we've already said that the series is kind of, it's not the book. These are sort of new stories. And one of the things you've sort of said is sort of in an interview that's been up on the BBC site is that, the stories themselves, they've been sort of inspired by the novel.
Yeah, to some extent.
Yeah, the events of the period. And you've also said sort of contemporary issues given historical spin.
Yeah.
Now, I'm interested in that last one. Can you kind of give any sort of hints as to what sort of issues?
Well, it's a bit like, that's a difficult one, isn't it? You always be careful what you say.
Well, yeah, I don't want you to
I'm fine with that. It's certainly the truth. I mean, what I'm getting at is really a way of making history seem vivid, seem alive. I didn't want to get trapped in a kind of historical version of the past that felt very periody, that felt like some BBC classic serial,
Right.
So what I was really trying to do was say, how cinematic can we make this? How much can we make this seem like a night out of the cinema that people might want to do? Because it's a genre that remains very popular in the cinema, but on TV it's almost disappeared. And I think it is about going back to that thing of character, and it's more of a modern attitude than specifically modern stories.
Right. Okay.
What I think I'm saying is that the stories are timeless. That they really are. They're not trapped in the past. They're all about. What I wanted to say was that anybody could come and watch this show and not feel that they were watching something alienating or strange or historical. Mm-hmm. Having said which, we do try and get as many of the details right as we can.
Well, something that I sort of took away when I kind of watched the trailer, and you have to sort of bear with me because it seems like a strange comparison.
No problem.
I kind of got the same feeling, and it's a good feeling that I got when I watch Ripper Street. I don't know if you've watched Ripper Street.
Yeah, I've seen Ripper Street. Yeah,
where it kind of it feels old, it feels classic, but at the same time, it kind of has a modern. It has a kind of modernness running through it, and that's kind of what I got. But the other thing I sort of took away from it is that it looked pretty. Given the fact it's a as you said, given the fact it's a TV show, it kind of feels like like you're watching a sort of mini film, and that's what I mean. It's the same sort of way they've done Ripper Street, where you almost feel like you're kind of watching, a sort of period film type thing, but with sort of action and adventure in there.
I think Richard Wardlow on Ripper Street had a very similar challenge. You could make something which feels old hat, a bit creaky, a bit sort of classic periody, or you can take those basic elements, shake them up, and do a show that feels faithful to the period, but also feels, exciting to a modern audience. He's taken the serial killer sort of genre and put it in that slightly gothic surrounding. And I think he's done it really well, to be honest. And, I think the difference between our shows is that, one of the differences is that Richard sort of invented a slightly ornate period language, which I think is really cool. But I've gone for a much looser, more modern kind of idiom in this show, because clearly 17th century France, we haven't got a bloody clue what they would have sounded like. and quite honestly, I don't want to go there, I wanted it to sound modern because, it just, anything else I think could have been alienating.
Yeah.
I think it works in Ripper Street because that gothic melodrama sort of area, you can be a little bit ornate,
Yeah.
And I mean that as a compliment.
No, definitely, definitely. But sort of getting back to the sort of Musketeers, we've kind of talked about the fact that one of the things you wanted to do was sort of take it seriously, and you've sort of described it as a swashbuckler with teeth. Now, one of the things that was, surprised me today, and I only realised it today when I was sort of doing some research on it, was that it's going out on Sunday, this Sunday coming, but it's going out at 9:00.
That's right.
So it's kind of after the watershed.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So, was that a conscious choice on your part that you wanted it to go after the watershed, or was that a time slot you were just given?
Well, not completely. I'll be honest with you about that. When I was given a brief that basically they wanted an adult show that would be capable of playing at 8 or 9 o'clock.
Right.
And that was tricky because I'm being very honest here, because obviously you're trying to find a balance. But there are some things you can't do at 8 o'clock that you can do at 9 o'clock. We are not as tough or as violent seeming as say, Ripper Street is, which always knew it was in that slot.
Yeah.
But I don't really mind that, because I think that, let me just finish that train of thought. Mm-hmm. What it does mean is, we're not Game of Thrones, we're not Rome, we're not that kind of very, very heavy, violent sexual content. But I think that it depends what you mean by adult. I'm very pleased that we're in the 9 o'clock slot, because it actually says to the audience, look, guys, this isn't Atlantis, which is nothing against Atlantis. I don't mean that in the wrong way. Mm-hmm. It is not a family show. It's an adult show, which the whole family can watch if they wish to.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a distinction that we make. And we are sexual, we are violent. We're just doing it in a way which is perhaps not as explicit as some of those other shows I mentioned.
Which I think is good, and I'm not knocking those shows. I absolutely love Game of Thrones.
It's very hard not to, isn't it?
Yeah, but but I've always kind of craved something not lighter. I don't mean it that way, but a swashbuckler. That's what I've craved,
Well, that was certainly the brief, and that was what I wanted to do, and I'm happy with that. Would I have liked to have pushed it a little bit more? Yes, I would, just a bit. But the truth is, I'm happy with the situation we're in. I wouldn't have changed any of the basic stories. So, I can live with the occasional compromise. Like things like hanging scenes, of which there are one or two. You've got very strict guidelines about that. So you have to we've probably done that a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't think it's bland at all, but you just can't quite show as much as we might have done had we known we were at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
But, the truth is that was the brief, and I was perfectly okay with it. And in a way, it's a good discipline, because I never, ever, ever compromised on the adult side of it. I pushed and pushed and pushed to do the stories that would come at it from an adult direction. And I think every single one of these is a story that you would say that's a grown-up storyline.
Yeah.
And we don't hold back on the reality of what's happening. There is definitely sex and violence going on. It's just you don't always see it all. Although in the first act you kind of do, actually. So, so if we had been in the family slot, we might have frightened everybody on it. But, I think the thing you said is rather important. This genre is an adventure genre. I don't think it completely lends itself to to the idea of doing the full Tudors with it. You know, I
No,
don't think you
no.
want to see all the heaving bosoms and the kind of blood everywhere, because it just isn't that kind of thing. The
No.
violence, as long as you know the violence is real, as long as you know the situations are real, as long as you know that if somebody takes a sword out of its scabbard, someone's going to get killed for real, then that's what you need. You don't really necessarily need to show somebody's head on the floor to know that they're dead, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
So I think it's just a genre that is actually helped by being a little bit less explicit.
Yeah, I agree. Now, in terms of sort of, obviously, from the clips I've seen, there seems to be a lot of action. And, you know, again, to use I've not been banned from using the term swashbuckler, so I'm going to keep using it.
Sorry, I'm more relaxed about it now. It's just while we were in development.
You know, I was almost, and this is a compliment, by the way. I was almost ticking off what I expect to see from a swashbuckler. It was literally the last clip I saw was D'Artagnan diving out of a window. I'm like, yep, that's great.
Yeah.
Horses, yep, that's great. Sword fighting, yep, that's great. So, and this is probably a bit more of a technical question, actually. How many of the scripts have you actually written?
Well, I've been involved with all the storylines.
Okay.
I've written 4 of the scripts. And I am the kind of writer who tends to get involved in some of the other scripts too.
Okay.
In the States, you'd call it a showrunner, really.
Okay. So, in terms of sort of the script and the relationship with the action sequences, like the sword fight and stuff like that, how much comes from you or the writer, and how much comes from sort of like the sort of stunt coordinators and the sort of fight coordinators and stuff like that? I'm just interested in the sort of relationship.
Well,
Do you literally go sword fight here and then they just get on with it?
No, yeah, it's a good question. It's a process. Well, clearly, you know, I'm not a sword fighter, so I wouldn't know what the terms would be to say I want this parry, that thrust, and all the rest of it. Well, I think what you're trying to do as a writer, and it's really the same process as I was trying to do with the characterization, is say, okay, an action sequence, right, well, what does that mean? Well, a lot of action sequences get boring if it's just virtuoso fighting. You know, where's the fun in that? So I thought my job was to say, what's different, what's unusual about this action sequence? So that's what I will try and write. I will write the thing that makes it fun, makes it not cliched, makes it unusual. And then having written that thing, whatever it might be a character touch, it might be a bit of action, it might be, you know, a choice of weaponry, something like that. After that, you then get together with your director, you get together with your stunt guy, you get together with your sword master, with the actors, and then you work it out from there. So it really is a collective process.
Right, okay.
But I don't think a writer should ever just say they fight, you know, because it leaves too much in other people's hands.
Yeah.
You've got to say, this is my vision of what this fight should be like. But if you go too detailed, you're going to be disappointed because it changes.
Yeah. And sort of while we're in the sort of technical side of things, I want to come back to the sort of casting and stuff in a minute. But one of my sort of big things, one of the things I'm a big fan of is soundtracks. And I believe that sometimes the soundtrack can be an unsung hero, to be it a TV show, be it a film.
Completely. Completely.
And no more so than the Swashbuckler. And I remember one of the moments in my life where I kind of realised that music was important to me was when I was watching the sort of Errol Flynn Robin Hood. And there's a scene, for me it's a really famous scene, where he kind of walks into, they're having this massive meal, like all the baddies, and he walks in and he's carrying a deer on his shoulder.
Yeah.
And there's just, the piece of music that plays there is just so epic. If you didn't know this guy was the hero and you just heard that piece of music, you would know a hero's being introduced.
Yeah. I think it's probably Ernest Corngold, wasn't it? I think.
I don't know. I've got the soundtrack
pretty sure it
somewhere.
Was Ernest Corngold, but I'm just looking for the DVD on my shelf here, but I can't see it right in the same. Anyway, you're absolutely right. So
my question is, how big a role did music play in the development of the show once filming was done?
Oh, an enormous amount. You know, I think on an action show, music is possibly more important than in any other genre. You know, you're always looking for that thing that helps the emotional depth of the scene, that gives you the motif for the various characters, that gives you that bit of extra excitement. I mean, I think, I don't know how people respond to it. Of course I don't. But, I think we've got Murray Gold doing this one.
Awesome.
And who does Doctor Who, of course.
Yeah.
And I think that what Murray's done is just lovely. It's just awesome. Apart from anything else, our theme tune absolutely rocks. It's just really good fun. But, it is all about, it is an extra character, the music. It's not about telling the audience what to think, because that would be a little too much. It's about emphasizing things. It's about giving you that subconscious sense of what's happening, or even a very conscious sense of what's happening. So it's an absolutely crucial part of it, Barry. It really is, totally. I mean, we spent an awfully long time with Murray working on the cues, working on the things we're trying to do. He's been extraordinary. He sent us some fantastic music. And it's a massive part of the show.
Oh, that's really, really good to hear.
See what you think. Let me know what you think.
I will do, definitely. I was really hoping it would be.
But music, it's massive, and that's why we wanted somebody as experienced and as smart as Murray to do it.
This is a bit of a segue, actually. So I'll get this question in now because you've mentioned Murray Gold. So obviously, the elephant in the room is the fact that Peter Capaldi is in this and he's playing Cardinal Richelieu. I can never say that name right. So before I ask the question, which a lot of people have said to me, if you do this interview, ask this question, I will ask the question that I want to ask, which is, Cardinal Richelieu for me is one of those characters that I've really loved. I almost hasten to use the term villain or big bad, because he's one of those characters, when he's done well, you can almost sometimes see his motivation.
Oh, yeah. He is. Again, very astute observation. He's not a villain in his own mind. I think that's how he will be perceived, because he is seen as this kind of Sheriff of Nottingham figure. But that's exactly what he isn't.
Yeah.
There is a very good case for saying that he is the guy who's trying to keep everything on the straight and narrow. He's the guy who's trying to just manage the country efficiently. He's not cruel. He just does what has to be done. If that means killing people, then he's not going to turn away from that job. But he doesn't do it for fun. But that's the reality. Nobody's a villain in their own head, at least not unless they're kind of completely crazy. So it's the thing with the Cardinal is making him very human and very understandable, and you're never going to get a better actor than Peter Capaldi to do that.
Just looking at photos of him, he looks quite militaristic in his sort of look.
A little bit. We based it on the original paintings, but with a modern spin, as we have with all the uniforms. You'll see very quickly when you see the show that we've really gone for a very lean silhouette, a very modern look for all the boys, which means that they're very there's a lot of leather. It's a bit of funky, sort of dirty leather. We've moved right away from the old blue fleur-de-lis tabards and feathered hats and all the rest of it. We had an enormous kind of waste bin in the costume department for any feathers that went past. We'd rip them off and chuck them in, So no big peacock feathers. There's one really knackered feather in Aramis's hat, which we let stay because we kind of liked it. And Santiago really knows how to wear a hat. But,
it's interesting, and let me get the Capaldi question out of the way, because I want to ask you about the Aramis one. So, obviously, he's now signed up to do, I don't know, some show.
Something kids' TV, I can't quite remember what it is.
Time Traveller, Who, something like that, something like that.
Time Tunnel, I think.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, so obviously, he's signed up to play Doctor Who, and that came whilst you were filming, I understand.
It did, yeah.
So, the question I've been asked is, did you have to do any rewrites in terms of this season because of that news?
In the first season?
Yeah.
No. That came, he got that gig, the Doctor Who gig, I think it was probably in our second to last block. We knew something weird was going on, and as you know, the BBC keeps it a closer secret than the election of a new pope at the Vatican. So we didn't know. I'm not going to tell you we knew, because we didn't. But basically what happened is that Peter had grown a very, very nice beard and moustache, and then he turned up on set without it and needed a wig, and we thought, well, that's kind of strange. But even then I didn't really get it. I thought maybe he just got fed up with it or something. He just wanted to wear it when he was on set and not other times.
Yeah.
So I think at that point, Jess Pope, my fellow executive producer, began to smell a rat somewhere, But we didn't know really until a few hours before everybody else did.
Right.
But at that point, all the scripts were written. Peter was available to do the rest of his days. There was no conflict with Doctor Who. and that was a done deal. So we completely understood why he would go. It's the opportunity of a lifetime. I'm not going to hold that against him. It's it's an incredible thing to have happened, and he is a genuine fan. So it's sort of thing that comes along once in a lifetime. Am I sorry about it? Of course I am, because I wanted him to stay in my show. Will we move on from it? Yeah, I think we probably will.
Yeah. So have you already, I mean, obviously I'm not asking you to spoil anything, so, this isn't one of those sort of questions. But, have you already sort of thought about how, I mean, you've kind of mentioned this to me before anyway, but have you kind of thought about how you're going to tackle it if it does get picked up for a second series? Yeah,
we have. We've been talking about that pretty much ever since Peter said he was going. I thought the first decision was to decide how we wanted to let the Cardinal go. And we all felt that Doctor Who is just too big. By the time, if we get a second series, by the time it's out on the air, Peter's first season as Doctor Who will already have been out there. And I think he'll be too established in the public's mind as the Doctor. I mean, even now there's a lot of that. And I'm fine with that. It's very understandable. But by that time, I think he'll be very established and we'll know what kind of Doctor he is, what kind of thing he's doing. So we felt the best thing was just to say, send him off with our love and let him go. So he won't be coming back to the show at all. So, the approach is simply to say we will, we'll bring in a new character to replace him. We will look at the book to see what potential there is there for other characters, other villains, and we will do the appropriate thing. And in a way, the only good thing about it, I'm not going to pretend I planned it this way because I'm not that dishonest, but the only good thing about it is that you kind of can avoid that Sheriff of Nottingham syndrome thing.
Yeah.
Where every week the sheriff says, "Damn, that pesky Robin Hood has foiled me again," kind of thing. You can keep varying the sorts of stories you're going to tell. I wouldn't have planned it this way. I wouldn't have worked it out this way. But given that this is the way it is, we're going to make something creative from it.
Well, as you say, you have to roll with the punches, don't you?
Yeah, and and obviously if you lose an actor like Peter, it's a blow.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to say that it's a blow we can't recover from.
Yeah, definitely. So back to Aramis. You were talking about his hat, and one of the very first shot that got released from this, and I think this was when you were still filming in Prague, and I think I dropped you an email, was it looked like he'd nicked Indiana Jones's hat. And I think, and it sounds silly, and I'm sure that wasn't the intent behind it, but just kind of seeing him in the hat, and then the rest of them, and the look of them, straight away I thought he's going for a different vibe. He's going for something that's going to be a bit more what I want, where the camp is kind of, no, this isn't going to be camp, this is going to be something a little bit more, for want of a better word, old school.
I think old school is fair, but old school with a modern inflection.
Yeah.
Raiders is a perfectly valid point of comparison, not because I think I'm as good as that, but because it's the benchmark film in the latter half of the 20th century for the reinvention of a genre. It was I was about 20 when I saw it. I can't remember now. Maybe a bit older, about 24, something like that. And it just struck me the same way it struck everybody else. Like it was like seeing something fresh all over again. I'm not saying that the Musketeers can do that, but I'm certainly saying that we could be influenced by that kind of attitude. And we just wanted a look that was convincing, that was lived in, that looked like these guys probably hadn't had a bath for about a week, that had a kind of slightly sweaty, smelly feel to it, but at the same time looked cool. I just wanted to look cool, Barry, to tell you the truth.
Well, in terms of like the Musketeers themselves, and again, forgive me, I don't know how the process works. So obviously you've done the scripts, you're the showrunner. How difficult did you find it casting the main roles, not just of obviously the Musketeers and D'Artagnan, but one of the roles which I think is actually potentially very difficult to cast, which is the role of Milady. So how hard did you find it casting those roles?
It is difficult. You're looking for not just an actor, you've got all the usual pressures of trying to, the salespeople would always like you to cast somebody well known because that helps them sell it and all the rest of it. It's all the stuff that you know from endless movies, but at the same time, you're looking for a chemistry between the players that really works. Obviously primarily between the boys, but also between Milady and Athos, because that's absolutely crucial to the serial element of the first season. That kind of love-hate thing that they've got going. You're looking to find the actors that can really catch those extremes. Obviously I'm going to say the same thing everybody else says, which is that, we think we got the right people in the end. Mm-hmm. But it's a process, and you put them together, you try different combinations. We saw a lot of very, very talented actors, and some decisions were very straightforward, some were slightly more complicated. I'm not going to tell you which ones.
No, I didn't think you would.
But, one day I'll tell you off the record.
Okay.
but it's just an interesting process. All I can say is, and I know it sounds like a platitude, but, we've got the actors we needed. We've got the guys we wanted.
I think what's good from my point of view, I always like to see in these sorts of shows actors that I haven't really seen a lot of, because I think they're playing such larger-than-life roles. It's easier for me to sort of get into those characters if I don't necessarily know them from 100 other shows, which is why, as you say, it would be difficult, I suppose, after Peter's gone on to do Doctor Who, if he was to then come back for like season 2.
Obviously that's what actors do, and we make that adjustment. We're always capable of that. But I think in the case of something like the Musketeers, I think you do want that fresh feeling to the casting. I mean, none of the guys are completely new. It's not like we said, nobody will have ever seen these actors.
Well, no, because obviously, it is Aramis he plays. Who is it? Santi? I can never say his name properly.
Santi, yeah, Santiago.
Yeah, who was in Merlin.
Yeah.
And I was a massive fan as Lancelot, and I was a massive fan of his in Merlin. And, and to sort of, I know I'm going to go back on my own point, but, seeing that he was sort of cast as Aramis, I thought, yeah, that's spot on. Yeah, I think he'll be great in it. And that kind of made me a bit more interested in it. I've completely invalidated my own point now.
You have rather, but that's okay. Life is full of contradictions, Barry.
Yeah, to be fair, the only thing I'd really seen him in was Merlin.
I'd seen him in Heroes, in the first season of Heroes, although I'd forgotten that.
Oh, but he was, wasn't he? Was he the artist?
He was, yeah. Yeah, and Luke Pasqualino, who plays D'Artagnan, was very popular from Skins. His Twitter numbers are through the roof of followers. But, it was about saying, can this actor be right in this part? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no question that Santiago brings a kind of cool quality, and he's not exactly bad-looking either to Aramis. You want Aramis to be the kind of man that has that impact when he walks into a room. Mm-hmm. But, I also wanted that to be true of the other actors. I didn't want Porthos to be the big fat comedy relief, which is what he gets played as again and again and again in movies.
Yeah.
I didn't want D'Artagnan to be very young and lightweight compared to others. I wanted him to be a grown-up. I didn't want Athos to be, just all gloomy and depressing. He had to have those different kind of grace notes in his performance. They're all good-looking in their way. They're all, but they're all proper men,
Yeah.
All grown-ups.
So, 2 more questions.
Yeah.
Question 1. What can we expect? I'll go with that one. What can we expect in terms of character from Milady? How is she different from previous adaptations, or is she different?
Yeah, she is different, and I think the freedom that we get from making new stories is taking the elements that are familiar from other adaptations, and then really pushing them in some interesting new directions. Milady is in this for the long haul, so clearly she's got to do more than just try and kill the Musketeers all the time. Mm-hmm. So, what I'm trying to do with Milady is really get into her backstory, tell you a little more about who she really is, what really happened between her and Athos, and you keep unpeeling that. That's the fun of inventing the mythology of any show like this. Is that you tell the audience a little bit here, then you tell them a bit more, and then you pull the rug out from under them and say, but that might not be true, maybe this is true instead. And you can keep going with that. And Mamie, who plays Milady, who's a fantastic actress, she's got the chops to really play all those different parts. the main thing, it's the same as Cardinal Richelieu, really, is she's got to be real. She's got to be human. She's not just a killing machine, although she is that. Yeah, she's an assassin. She's a killer. But that doesn't mean that's all she is, and there might be a reason why she's that person. And the series, the fun of the series is really exploring why she might be like that and what she's going to turn into. So, and exploring her relationship with the Cardinal is very good fun as well. There was always a very sort of sexual vibe between them, and that's something I wanted to explore. It's quite a sexy show in that respect. As I say, it's not an explicit show, but you're very aware of how sexuality affects people's decision-making and all the rest of it, And the lady is kind of glorious fun. She's really evil, she's really unpleasant sometimes. But she's never not human,
Yeah, and that's an important thing to get right.
And and carrying on, examining who she is and what she might become is really one of the best fun things about thinking about possible series 2.
Okay, my last question. So, 3 words to sum up the Musketeers.
Fun, action, modern.
Nice. I won't count the
Yeah, you don't count that. That's not bad. Fun, action, modern. There you go.
Excellent.
Said it without a break.
Excellent. And obviously the show itself, episode 1, is on this Sunday at 9 o'clock on BBC One. And I, for one, I've obviously started this at the beginning of the interview, but I'm going to say it again, God damn it. I, for one, seriously can't wait. The thing I'm most excited about now after talking to you is the music. It is the fact that you have taken, the music very seriously.
Very, very seriously. And, if you look at any great swashbuckler, the music is usually a massive element of it.
Yeah.
Right the way through from Robin Hood to the Gene Kelly to the Raiders to, you name it. It's always the case. I think that when Spielberg and Lucas were beginning to re-examine those genre films all those years ago, they were thinking exactly the same thing. The music really matters. And John Williams was the man they needed to do that. And for us, it's Murray. I think he's done an extraordinary job.
Yeah, and he's certainly done a great job on Doctor Who. So I am looking forward to it. So what I would like to do is, when the series is over, get you on again and have a bit of another sort of chat about how things went and sort of talk over what I thought about it and what other people thought about it. If you're up for that.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine by me. I can't wait to get it out there and see what people think.
Yeah, I bet, mate. I bet. And I will. So I just want to thank you again for taking the time out to come on and chat about the Musketeers.
You're welcome, Barry.
Excellent. All right, mate. Well, you take care and best of luck with the show.
Thanks, Barry. I really appreciate it. And
no
thanks
worries.
for all the interest. And thanks for the questions. There's really smart stuff there.
Well, I try.
You bet.
All right, mate. You take care of yourself.
Thanks a lot. Speak to you soon.
See you later, mate. Bye.
Bye.
And that was Adrian. Well, I hope you enjoyed the interview. As I said, I've watched the trailer and I think the show looks great, and I hope if it's half as good as the trailer looks, then we're in for one hell of a ride. I'm going to say Swashbuckler, damn it. I'm sure by now I'm going to get some sort of BBC cease and desist on that word, but for now I'm going to say Swashbuckler. All that remains is for me to say, if you want to get hold of us, you can check out our website, which is www.geeksyndicate.co.uk. You can email us, which is thegeeks@geeksyndicate.co.uk. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook and Google Plus and, all those places. That's where we hang out. So anyway, we will be back with our usual episode, and once we'll be back, and Dave will be back in the driving seat, and I will be probably in the boot. Anyway, until that time, this is Geek Syndicate. I'm out.